Hello and welcome. My name is Deborah Guthrie, and joining me today for this Wisdom Wednesday segment is Peter Menser. He is the Associate Planner for Meridian Township, and we are talking about medical marijuana.
Yes,
Thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here.
So it's kind of been a whirlwind in Michigan with it not being passed, passing, recreational marijuana, and Meridian Township started looking at medical marijuana a while ago. And recently on May 21st, they passed, and I get this right, commercial medical marijuana facilities. Can you walk us through the timeline a little bit of where Meridian Township started, and when they started looking at this, and where we're at today?
Sure. About a year ago, the Township Board started talking about, we all knew that the state act had passed that allowed medical marijuana facilities, specifically the commercial aspect of it. So the first part of the law that passed several years ago was related to more patients and individuals growing marijuana in their homes for treatment of qualified illnesses through the state. And that changed a couple years ago, relating specifically to how do people get the medical marijuana. So adding a commercial aspect to that. So there are 6 different types of licenses that are allowed here in the state of Michigan. So we have growing facilities, secure transport, so I'll just walk through them. The secure transport is the motor vehicles that actually transport marijuana from a grow facility to another type, which is provisioning center. A lot of people probably know those as dispensaries, is kind of the slang term before, but it's the retail face where an individual would actually go somewhere and purchase medical marijuana. There's also safety compliance facilities, and they do the testing. And processors, so they actually process the plant into different products.
So I heard you, did you say there are 6 different types?
Yes.
I heard growing facilities, secure transport, provisioning center, safety compliance.
So 5, I guess.
And processes.
Yes.
Okay, so 5. And so Meridian Township, explain what Meridian Township was looking at and what was passed on May 21st.
Sure. The real crux of the issue was there are a couple different decisions. The community really could decide whether they wanted to opt in and allow any of these types of uses in the community. You could have, much like recreational marijuana, you have the right to opt out or opt in. So the township first decision was we're going to opt in. So they made that decision.
To medical.
Yep, to medical marijuana. Recreational is separate. So once you decided we're going to allow this in some manner, it's really down to how many facilities, what types of facilities, and where can they go. And so that's been the decisions that the board has been considering over the last about a year or so.
Okay, and so of these, what did the board approve?
Sure. So the board's approach in this case was twofold. We adopted a non-zoning ordinance, so it's a regulatory ordinance that talks about operational restrictions, and that can be anything from how the business operates, hours of operation, the requirement for a permit, and all the details related to the permit in terms of what do we require for an application, all the really kind of technical details.
And that's really no different than other businesses that come to the township, correct, in regards to ordinances and what the requirements are. We saw it with Costco and other companies that came here.
Something like a car dealership. They're going to have, hours of operation. They're going to have specific rules that apply to them.
And so the township and the ordinances, and the township ordinances says, okay, these are the hours of operation. This is where this type of business can be zoned. Yada yada yada.
Yeah. So there's 2 things. So there's the operational, the non-zoning ordinance, and then the zoning ordinance is where can they go, and what types can go where, really. So the township established 6 different areas. We call them overlay areas in the community, and they're spread geographically throughout the township. And those are the areas where commercial medical marijuana facilities can locate. So in the different areas, there are different uses allowed in each area. So I won't go through all those, but generally, in some areas we allow provisioning centers and other types of other uses. In some we only allow growing and processing. So that's the primary difference, is what can be where.
What has been some of the concerns that the board has heard and what you've heard? You've been working on this 24/7 practically a lot.
Yeah.
This is a new thing in the township. So what are some of the major concerns that you've heard that the board has tried to address throughout this process?
I think the biggest thing right off the bat was board looked at kind of competing uses. So they wanted to establish setbacks from schools, public and private schools, churches, other types of religious facilities, daycare centers. They wanted to make sure that that separation was there, the kind of the buffering between uses, and that's not unlike any other kind of use that may have impacts on adjacent properties.
Okay.
So, for example, with a grow facility, for example, not only did we adopt operational restrictions, they're going to say you have to minimize or eliminate the impacts to adjacent property. So you've heard it in other communities, the smell from a growing facility. So our ordinance requires that there are measures taken and demonstrated to the township and that are enforceable into the future, that those types of uses won't impact adjacent properties. So in establishing the overlay areas, the 6 areas, we actually put together a map that had setbacks established and picked areas that were away from all those other uses.
And it's available on the township website.
Yep, there's a map on there right now. We call the overlay area map.
Okay.
And it shows where these overlay areas are. Yep.
Okay, so July 24th, 2019, the application process is open.
Yes.
Is open up. Explain what that is.
Sure. So behind the scenes, since the board during and after the board adopted the zoning and non-zoning ordinance, staff has been working on kind of the administrative rules of how we're going to handle this process.
Yeah.
So, and that's everything from drafting an application, coming up with a process, and documenting that process so it's transparent, not only for the folks that are going to be seeking out the permits, but also for the rest of the township and for staff, because it's something new that we haven't dealt with before. We're putting frequently asked questions together. So what's going to happen is we had to advertise that we were going to be accepting these applications, and it started actually this morning.
Is that a requirement by law? Or?
It's a requirement, at least in the township's ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to say that, hey, we're going to be doing this. So that went out. We have the application packet and just posted it yesterday to the township website. And there's an application, there's a checklist, there's a lot of information, there's a letter, a lot of information that's going to tell the potential applicants what the township expects. Copies of our rules, so we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
When they come into this, they know what to expect.
How many applications do you anticipate receiving? I mean, is this a popular thing for people to apply to?
Yeah, well, I've gotten a lot of calls from potential operators.
And they're applying for what? I'm sorry.
Mostly what I've heard so far are provisioning centers.
Okay.
I don't know yet the extent of interest towards grow facilities or secure transporters, processors.
And provisioning centers, again?
The provisioning centers are kind of the retail face where a person could go purchase medical marijuana. Okay.
So somewhere where you go purchase it. And the requirements for that is you can't have a marijuana sign outside, or
there are some operational restrictions established by the state and by the township, and what the township has said is it's the symbols related to representing the store. So there's no marijuana leaf, for example.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So that they fit into the character of our existing commercial businesses.
So is it only provisioning centers that people will be applying for?
They can apply for any of the facility licenses.
Okay.
So in adopting the ordinance, the township board established that there could be 6 provisioning centers, and then 3 of everything else.
Okay.
So it's an open market at this point. They could apply for any of those. And I'll briefly walk you through the process of how that happens, because in each of these areas there are potentially, multiple buildings that could be open. So what we have, and it's not unlike the situation in other communities, where we've established here's this finite number of permits that we're going to allow, but the possibilities are much greater. So, for example, in one of our areas, we're only going to allow 1 provisioning center, but actually what we're going to do is we're going to allow one in each area, but if we don't get an application, say for, and I'm making a number up, but if we don't get an application for Area 5, then we would allow that application in another district.
Okay.
But in no case will there be more than 2 provisioning centers in each of these areas for a maximum of 6, no matter what. So it's possible, and I'm expecting it, and you see it in other communities, you can read stories about it in the news, that in any given area there may be 10, let's say 10 properties that qualify for a permit. But since we know the township's only going to allow 2 maximum in each overlay area, we're going to have more applications than we do opportunities to operate. So what we'll be doing later in the year, tentatively scheduled for September 23 here at the township property, will be a lottery system. So staff, so we're going to take applications until August 9th at 5 o'clock. It's a Friday.
Okay.
So we're giving people an opportunity to fill out the application, get all the required materials that they need, turn all those into us. We'll call it on Friday, August 9th at 5. And everything that's here will be divided up into both overlay area and then type. So if we get we get, let's say, 20 applications for 2 permits in one specific district, we'll have a lottery. So it's going to be as literal as having numbered balls and one of those
like a bingo thing.
page,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a public event in our town hall room.
Okay.
Where someone will we'll put the numbers. So let's say there's 20 applications. We'll put 20 balls numbered 1 through 20.
Okay.
And we'll crank it and call the number out, and whoever's called would get the opportunity. So you don't necessarily get a permit. The lottery doesn't issue a permit, but what it does is it puts you in line for application for a special use permit, and that special use permit will be considered by our planning commission and our township board.
Okay.
You also, at the same time, and there are a lot of moving pieces to this process,
sounds
but
like it.
at the same time, you've got to have, or at least be able to demonstrate initially your pre-qualification from Michigan, the license, Laura.
Laura.
Yep. So once you've done that, and at the end of the process, you'll have to be able to demonstrate that you've received, ultimately, township approval and state approval before you can open.
Is this a process other communities do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've mimicked our process on other communities in the state.
Okay. What are some of the concerns the township police have had? Is there safety concerns around having, dispensaries, medical, commercial?
I think the general idea is, and this may change in the future, but as of now, it's all about the cash. So, and our chief of police shared this with the board at a couple meetings, but anytime you've got large amounts of cash, where my understanding is that there's challenges in the industry in finding places to put money, essentially, because they have trouble, because marijuana still at the federal level is technically illegal. It's a Schedule 1 drug. So I think that they're having challenges finding places to deposit, establishing relationships with banks. I know a lot of people are working behind the scenes to try to find ways to make that better and safer.
Yeah.
But as of now, you've got what essentially is cash business. Not necessarily you need to purchase it with cash. I don't actually know that part, but you've got potentially a business that may have a lot of cash, but they have a lot of arguably valuable product on the site. So I think any time that comes into play, the police are definitely hyper aware of the situation and are going to be working to maintain safety in those circumstances.
What are your concerns as township staff throughout this process? I mean,
yeah, so it comes down to, it's not probably very exciting, but the administrative aspect of it can be challenging, because what we're going to be doing, we're entering into new territory as a kind of an administrator and as a processor. At the township, I'm used to a lot of land use applications and processes. This is a little bit different because there's a lot of things we're going to have to we have a checklist of application materials, and there's just a lot of materials to review.
Yeah.
And there are things that we're new to as well. So, like, for example, a security plan. An applicant's going to have to provide a security plan for the site, and background checks for its employees and background information on the ownership structure. So if it's an entity, who's a part of the LLC, where do those people live, who are, we're in background checks and all those kind of things.
Are these requirements more than other businesses because of the type of business that it is?
Yeah, it's all information that they're required to provide.
Okay.
For the medical marijuana ordinance.
Okay. And what about taxes? What about and any application fees and, because you have residents who are paying taxes, you have businesses who are paying taxes. What does that return look like?
Yeah, I don't know so much about taxes. So I think that otherwise, from the tax perspective, they're treated like other businesses.
Just like, okay.
But from the township's perspective, there's a fairly hefty starting price. So it's $5,000 application to file with the township, and it's due, and it's non-refundable. It's due upon turning in the application.
Okay. And
then every year there's a renewal process that these folks are going to have to go through, and that's a new $5,000 fee. So
when they do the renewal. Is there a reinspection of the facility and
so they really have
their
to
business?
They have to remain in good standing with us.
Okay.
So throughout the year, we're monitoring before they open. There's a series of inspections that happens.
Yeah.
And then throughout the year, we're verifying: is the plan? Are they doing what they said they were going to do? Is it remaining good standing with both state license and with the township? Have there been changes in ownership? That kind of thing.
Okay. When do you anticipate seeing development of commercial facilities?
It might be a while still.
Okay.
So if you follow the state news, the state is right now promulgating and finalizing the rules. So I think you might see some dispensaries open if they haven't opened yet. But in Michigan, you'll see the first kind of legal dispensary or provisioning centers are going to open. Sorry, that's for recreational. But at the township level, I think we're accepting applications till August. We'll do a lottery in September. If it's an existing business, they still have to or if it's a new business in an existing building, they'll still have to go through all the state, getting their license and everything. And then the special use permit process. So I would think not until maybe mid to late winter, early spring.
Yeah, you have a construction season window, you've got winter, you have all that kind of stuff happening.
Yeah, the fastest thing we would see is as a new business in an existing space that really they're just swapping out fixtures, doing their security measures, getting the product on site. There's a lot of things that beyond what a typical business, and there's a lot of technical details that I don't have right in front of me, but in terms of how they lay out the business, how you walk in, I know there's a series of locked doors and how you get back to where the product is for sale. So it's a little bit different, a little more upfront work than just like say opening a restaurant or a t-shirt store or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything I haven't asked you about the commercial facilities that the public should know, that we should know?
I would say, rest assured that there's a lot of review. Whether you agree or disagree with the concept of medical marijuana, it is something that's happening at the state level, and the township has opted in, and we've adopted this ordinance. But rest assured, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes reviews and vetting of the permit applications by both local officials and state officials.
Okay.
So we're committed to making this a safe environment for both the community, so residents, but also the operators here.
And then recently, switching from the medical marijuana to recreational marijuana, recently the township board, opted out of?
Yep.
Okay, so they opt in or they opt out of the recreational portion as well, and they opted out of the recreational portion.
It's much like the medical marijuana. You kind of have the option at this point. The laws, this is a constantly changing thing. So, as of now, the township has formally opted out of the recreational marijuana process. So we're not going to be allowing any establishments for recreational marijuana right now.
Okay.
And really, the reasoning behind that was, our supervisor and the board provided a lot of good information on that. But I think the general idea is we're dipping our toe in the water with this medical. It's a new use. Let's see how it goes. And really, there's a lot of evolving law behind all of this. So
Okay.
rather than say we're going to do it now, I think take a conservative approach.
Okay. So the next, I mean, obviously people can tune into HOMTV and see what's happening, and they can watch township board meetings on HOMTV and see the decisions that they're making. What would be the next piece of news or information that would be we would be sharing?
Yeah.
Is it the lottery? Is it the...
Yeah, I think it's the lottery. So the next real big public aspect of this will be when the lottery's held and the township will announce who won the lottery in the different areas, assuming we use the lottery in every area. So once that's established, we'll know then through the special use permit process, we'll know when a public hearing for a special use permit is coming along, and that'll all be at public planning commission meetings, and they'll be able to follow that process.
Okay.
And from there, we'll know really who is going to be operating these places, where they're going to be, and that should be a very public process as well. There may be announcements along the way.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And just to let you know that the Meridian Township website, meridian.mi.us, has a medical marijuana section. So if you go to the business section on the township website, you will see medical marijuana information. And Associate Planner Peter Menser, his contact information is on there. So if you're looking to apply, or if you're a resident and you have questions about it, he's open, let me tell you, because I ask him questions all the time. So he's there and available. I want to thank you for watching this Wisdom Wednesday segment. You've provided us a lot of information. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you for watching.